one of the most terrifying things, in my opinion, is space. I mean, most people might not think about it much, but others, they might. And in my opinion, space is one of the most terrifying things out there. An expansion, a giant expansion of everything, starting from the single point of the Big Bang to just all of this. All the stars, all the galaxies, all the planets, all the asteroids, everything from a single point, a single rift, something that created an expansion of what we call the universe. Fun fact, there are more planets than grains of sand on Earth. And when you think about that, that is a lot. And that is something to think about. And at first you might say, well, of course, they fill up all of the universe. No. The universe is mostly comprised of empty cosmic voids that stretch for many, many, many light years. And yeah, just many light years. So all of those planets and all of those stars and all of that is not enough to fill up the entirety of the universe. Because the universe is just mostly voids. So when you really think about it, the universe is very, very large indeed. And there's just so much unexplained about it. Like, are there more than one universes? Or other things of the sorts that I'm not going to get into. But you get my point. And while traveling through the cosmos, through rifts, cosmic jet streams, through passing through light, you may begin to find something. Something that might be a little odd when you sit down and think about it. What do I mean? Well, I mean something that no other place that we've found has, and that is Earth. Earth may not seem unique to some people, and while there are people that do believe that Earth is pretty unique, I mean, like, come on, bro. Like, look at our fossil record. Like, what is Dickinsonia? Like, come on. But when you really sit down and think about it, Earth has something that no other place has. I mean, the majority of I've talked to, people talk about life is pretty boring. I mean, it's everywhere. Well, at least that's what some people I've talked to said. It's just everywhere, and you can find it everywhere. And we've mapped out a lot of it. However, I feel like most people don't take time to appreciate it. I mean, it's the only reason you're here today. Life. Because you are life. You are a living organism. And that's something that no other place has. Earth has life. Beautiful life that is formed all throughout the globe in its harshest environments. From green plants expanding and bustling through the wind, absorbing the beautiful sunlight to create their sugars, and then breathing through to release oxygen, which is nice. There are also microorganisms, single-celled little creatures that dwell within Earth. Some are simpler than others, and others a bit more complex than what you might think, but they're still filling in their niches as small, little microorganisms. Then you have animals. Some are small and numerous. Others are quick and fast, speeding through lush savannas. Others are a bit more simple, and others are a bit more complex. And in that arrived Homo sapiens. And do I believe, through the depthness of myself, that Earth is the only place to have life? Think about it. Is Earth the only place ever to have such oddities that is life? Do I believe that? Well, no, of course not, because I wouldn't be uploading this video if I didn't. When it comes to life, I do believe that life could be on the subsurface ocean of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. A subsurface ocean being an ocean underneath the icy cores of moons or planets. And I do believe that that could be the case for Europa. having little microorganisms. And that arises a question that I have for you. What do you think aliens look like? Do you think of strange little microorganisms dwelling in subsurface oceans or other distant worlds just thriving in the deepness of microscopic life? Or do you think of terrestrial alien animal-like creatures or alien-like organisms that are multicellular? None of them are really sapient per se, but they're still out there, just alien-like animals in particular time periods and such. Or maybe the first thing that comes to mind is alien sapiens, which is out there. Maybe you think with alien sapiens the normal humanoids or octopus-like aliens, or maybe you just think of very strange alien sapiens. Whatever the case, you think that there could be alien sapiens, maybe all three of those things. Personally, I believe that microorganisms, which are out there, just microorganism aliens, are a bit more common than that of all the other sorts. So, basically, I do believe that it's a bit more common, and the animal-like aliens and sapient-like aliens are a bit rarer, especially the sapient ones. I believe that's extraordinarily rare. Alien animals, I do believe is rare, but it's probably not uncommon then. Now, there are many series out there that attempt to explain life beyond Earth, whether it be the original alien biospheres by Biblidian, maybe the Zero Project, which is an open, expansive world, maybe Project Apono, which is out there with cool planets. Maybe there's also, Project Solara, which has the world of Verdantara and Project Markaraji. And there is Project Methania, which has pretty unique structure, with mainly methane instead of oxygen being used. And I do believe that there is life beyond here, and these are just some examples of many projects out there that attempt to explain life beyond our star and Earth. So, what do you think could be out there? And in this project, I am going to attempt to explain all of it. So, traveling throughout the cosmos, you may find the Tadpole Galaxy. The Tadpole Galaxy is a very odd-looking galaxy. It gets its name Tadpole Galaxy because it's a long strand of stars that move out beyond its main body, per se, quotations. And that makes it look a bit like that of a tadpole. And that makes it unique. However, looking deeper into the galaxy, you may find something a bit odd. You may find a star. This star called Angie. Angie is a G-type star. A G-type star is a star basically that of Earth's star, which is a G-type star. And that's what Angie is. It's a G-type star. However, this star does emit more blue and green light. Make sure you keep this in mind because we're going to be talking about it with some of the future planets in this series. And it is a bright star in the dark reaches of the Tadpole Galaxy. And of course, with any good star, Angie has some planets orbiting it. So, what are some planets orbiting this bright, beautiful star? One of them is Antiposis. Antiposis is a odd planet. It is the first planet in the system, and it is a little bigger than Earth, with a higher gravity, meaning that you would weigh a bit more if you're on this planet. However, I'm sure you want me to express the elephant in the room here. Why does it look like an egg? Why does it look like this? Well, it's because if a planet gets to a certain degree of closeness to its star, the star's gravity, in this case Angie's gravitational pull, shaped it into an egg shape. We have documentation of this happening out there with WASP-12b and others. And this has caused poor ep1 to not have an atmosphere and for it to be tidally locked, meaning that one side experiences a never-ending day, the other never-ending night. And there is a small band that is just right. But it doesn't matter because there's no atmosphere, so any creature cannot breathe and would die. So, no life on this strange rock. The next planet is Zopyros. Zopyros is the main planet and the star of the show. Zopyros is an Earth-sized planet, very similar gravity, being around 9.79, which means you would weigh a little lighter, but not that much. The planet also has an axial tilt of 24.6, meaning that it has a bit more seasonal variation. It also has a moon called Tella, which is very high in metals. We will talk about it a bit more later and its beautifulness, because it is the star of the show, so keep holding on to it. We'll come back to it later. The next planet is Zopyros. Zopyros is a very big planet. Zopyros is it is a very big planet, and it is what we call a super Earth. A super Earth being a rocky planet that is bigger than Earth. So, for example, Zopyros would probably be around the size of Kepler 1A81 or 1BB1. It would be around that size, so pretty bigger than Earth, and by extension, the habitable main star of the show. And most notable about this planet is its rings. Its rings of frozen rock and ice. Now, this planet is on the edge of the habitable zone, meaning that it could have life, because it has a saltwater ocean and continents, and is tectonically active. And, it's very bigger, and it's gonna have a higher gravity. This also means that animals might not get as large as they would on Earth, but they still might get pretty large. Now, the rings is something that I need to talk about. The rings come from an ancient moon. The ancient moon came a little too close during the early stages of the planet, which caused it to be ripped up and crashed down onto the planet, and the bits of debris that still remained flattened out and turned into a long ring system, kind of like Saturn. However, there's another planet out there, the fourth planet. This is Ebronian Titan. Ebronian Titan is a large gas giant in the solar system. This planet is around the size of
Saturn,
minus the rings, as this gas giant doesn't really have rings per se. The gas giant has so many moons. Ebronian Titan has so many moons that there's too many to count in this video. But here are the main ones to count: Vola, Pam, Tuva, Larco, Romulus, and Remus, being the biggest moons it has. Lucra and Pam might have a subsurface ocean in it. This means that they could lead to life on the moons of this giant gas giant. However, in the far reaches of the solar system, you might be able to find Monos. Monos is a cold, lifeless rock. It is, in fact, a dwarf planet, but it is very small, and it has managed to not make itself into a sphere, so it's pretty pathetic. But other than that, it is just a barren, lifeless rock covered in ice and rocks. Pretty boring. This is a map of the solar system. Now, this solar system is not to scale, by the way, so don't keep it in scale. But it's a rough indicator of what the solar system might look like. And this is what it looks like. Nice. Very, very nice. Now, taking a very, very quick look back to the main planet of Zopyros, we need to talk about everything about this bright, beautiful planet. Let's start. Let's first start with atmospheric composition. First off, the planet has 76% nitrogen, 28% oxygen, 0.98% argon, and 0.10% carbon dioxide. So it is pretty oxygen rich and has a little less nitrogen, but it's still got a lot of nitrogen and a little bit of argon. And the rest is comprised of, well, other gases out there that could be in its atmosphere, which is methane and other stuff. Now let's talk continental drift. As this is a very tectonically active planet, it's going to have tectonic rifts and changes. Let's look at it. At first, we can see a large supercontinent divided by a large ocean called Caloria. Caloria is a superocean, and within it, of course, is this giant supercontinent. However, taking a look, we can divide this supercontinent into main segments based on the tectonic plates that they rest upon. First is Cervara, which is a tectonic activity place, and Kura, which is another tectonic plate. And around them are two islands, which we will not talk about yet, but they could be important in the future. Now, what's a good project without showing tectonic drift? I will show you how they drift now. First, Kura splits from Cervara and creates small island chains around it, around Cervara, yeah. Then they recombine together, and a piece of Kura breaks apart into Kurvala. Kurvala is a new continent, and during this time, a brief ice age accumulates, making the sea level drop, which means a lot more land is formed, while the two little islands drift around on the coasts of Kurvala. Then the ice age ends, and that splits parts of Kurvala into a new, smaller continent called Exarva, and it also splits another orange island off the coast of Kurvala, which would make a new island. Then Kurvala fuses into Kura and Cervara, leaving Exarva to be a lone island continent for a lonely existence, while the rest of the islands are stuck outward. And that is the tectonic activity of Zopyros, which it has a pretty unique tectonic activity, I would say. However, it wasn't always this way. This is Zopyros during its ancient times. Zopyros was an old, lifeless rock, and while it was in the habitable zone, it was a hot desert. There was pretty much nothing on it. It was barren, just barren rock with one little moon, and that's it. Just floating around, no water to speak of. And while it was in the habitable zone, no water was forming yet. However, that was until one event changed it all. In the solar system looked like this, except Zopyros had no oceans. However, taking a look near an asteroid belt, you might find something very interesting. This is Hypodontus. Hypodontus is an ancient dwarf planet. Now, this dwarf planet was in a thin asteroid belt near the giant gas giants of Erothian Titan. Now, this small dwarf planet was in an asteroid belt. And, well, taking a look at its surface, you can see lots of ice and, wait, what's that noise? Whoa! Oh, what the heck? Did that volcano just spit ice and water? Well, that's right. This ancient dwarf planet in the asteroid belt had a subsurface ocean, an ocean beneath the icy crust of this relatively large dwarf planet. Now, this may not seem special, as it's far away from Zopyros. So, how does this help give Zopyros life? Well, keep in mind, it's in an asteroid belt, and eventually, large asteroids began to collide with it, and eventually knocked it out of the asteroid belt. At first, it was heading towards Zopyros. However, it missed and hit straight towards Zopyros. It smashed into Zopyros, and once that happened, it spewed all of its ice everywhere on Zopyros. It began to land straight down like fiery meteorites. Some of it even collided with the moon, and it left a huge crater, which would later be reformed by bits and pieces of it and also parts of the debris. This formed a temporary fiery ring, but that ring would eventually collapse into Beret. This happened somewhat similar to Earth. Earth, around 4.5 billion years ago, collided with Theia, a Mars-sized planet, which you can actually find fossil evidence of fossilized pieces of it still beneath Earth, which is interesting. Now, poor Zopyros went from a relatively boring place to now a hot, hellish landscape with a raging lava field and giant volcanoes erupting, some of them even being seen from space, and giant craters everywhere, and more pieces of ice landing down. Giant blocks of ice, the size of entire glaciers. And while yes, these little pieces of ice in this image may look small, they're the size of glaciers. And eventually, they've reached down onto the lava-filled planet. And eventually, some of the ice and water vapor left in the atmosphere began to cool down the planet. And eventually, all that was left was rock. But the ice melted into vapor, and more vapor went into the air. And when that happened, it eventually created a cycle known as the water cycle. And you know what happens when vapor goes in the air. Fluffy clouds form, and when these clouds form, eventually these clouds are going to, well, rain. It rained and stormed for many, many years. Up to around many years. Let's just say millions of years. It rained on Zopyros, filling giant rains coming down from the heavens and clouds. Some of this rain even began to erode rock nearby, causing a lot of sodium to be washed out into this water, causing oceans, salty oceans that stretched 4 miles. However, it was still very volcanically active, and volcanoes were still coming out from the not far ago collision of the dwarf planet. This caused massive eruptions, which caused its supercontinent to be still left up, thus resulting into, well, this supercontinent. And that was nice. Now, taking a look on the surface, there is nothing more but barren rock. Maybe some ice on mountains, and just barren rock. There's nothing. And you might find yourself stumbling onto a beach. Looking out onto the beach, you might find something interesting. A place where you might not think to look, but when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You're looking in the wrong areas. You need to be looking for life under the waves. Thank you guys so much for watching the first episode of Zopyros. And well, I'll hopefully get the next episode out very shortly. Have a good day, and bye-bye.